So the Ojibwe would harvest the wild rice. Originally, they would thresh the stalks to extricate the kernels. This was referred to as knocking the rice by the Ojibwe. But when others, including Europeans, began harvesting the rice, they would use mechanical combines. But to this day, most Ojibwe harvest rice by knocking. Most Native American Indian moccasins were originally made of soft leather from deerskin, and the stitching was done using sinew to sew the pieces together. Native Americans acquired their sinew from animals like deer, buffalo, moose, and elk. Patterns on moccasins have a basic structure, and yet they were subtly different in many tribes, and Indian people could often tell each other's tribal affiliation simply from the design of their shoes. Tribes show their differences by the cut of the moccasins, beadwork, quillwork, painted designs, and fringes which decorated moccasins uniquely. Take a look at this map to see the locations of tribes with their different designs around the United States. In some tribes, they would add rawhide for durability and rabbit fur for added warmth. Men and women both wore moccasins, but decorations for male or female might have used some different patterns. Moccasins are still being made and worn in Native American tribes today. And in American society as a whole, moccasins have become quite popular, and both kinds, hard or soft soles, and those worn as shoes or slippers, are made by many stores around the country. Moccasin is an Ojibwe word added to the English language by the first Europeans who came to America. The Ojibwe and their tribal relatives were the ones who first developed the moccasins. Minnetonka Moccasins is one company in Minnesota doing a lucrative business in making moccasins of all kinds, which they sell all over the world. Moccasins are popular and a cozy must-have for cold winters in Minnesota and even for cool evenings in the summer. They serve practical purposes but also sport beautiful designs. Ponchos and parkas have also been introduced by our Native American neighbors. They also are used for warmth, provide style, and design. Cotton is something that was introduced to us by the Native Americans. According to this article from Our Everyday Life, cotton fibers are woven into fabric and then made into clothing. And cotton is the world's most commonly used natural fiber, locally and worldwide. It's grown in 85 countries and uses 2.5% of the world's arable land. 40% of women's clothing is made from 100% cotton. Next, I want to talk about the history of Native American tribes and their poverty and how the economy has grown. For Minnesota tribes like the Ojibwe and Dakota and Native American tribes everywhere, many post-World War II generations lived in poverty. Then in the late 1960s to early 1990s, laws changed and tribal governments expanded in the areas of education, healthcare, and human services, and communities began to come out of some poverty as they operated small businesses. But it wasn't until laws changed about gambling and gaming that things really turned around for the Native American tribes, and they were able to impact Minnesota's economy. According to this MinnPost article, Indian gaming can actually be traced to Minnesota, specifically the Leech Lake Reservation, just outside of Bemidji. There was this couple, Russell Bryan and Helen Charwood, who sued Itasca County over a property tax bill assessed on their mobile home. Their home was on reservation land. They argued that they didn't have the right to be taxed on tribal land. Their case, Bryan versus Itasca County, went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, where they ruled that governments could not tax property on reservation land because it is the territory of their sovereign nation, according to treaties signed with the federal government. The decision made from this court ruling led to new understandings about laws regulating tribal activity, especially economically on reservations. This included gambling, which had been limited to just a few states and was highly regulated. So finally, in 1988, when the Indian Regulatory Gaming Act was instituted by the Supreme Court, tribes were given the right to operate gambling businesses. and the National Indian Gaming Commission was established to oversee Indian gaming. In 1992, the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux Community, the SMSC, opened Mystic Lake Casino. There are 11 tribes now who run 40 gaming facilities in Minnesota.